just love that last part. Gives me chills every time.
Hello everyone, hope you all are enjoying your day today. I'm actually genuinely excited to talk about the Callisto protocol. And the main reason why is because I'm playing it on my new PS5. And damn, I gotta admit, it was cool to play on PS5 now after 2 years of no PS5s at all near my area. So I'm like, oh, finally I have one. But anyways, the gameplay used in this review is mine that the PS5 has captured. So this is PS5 captured footage, okay? So y'all will be able to judge my gameplay and see how bad I do at this game. Technically, to clarify, it's a PS4 port from the disc that I had from the PS4, and I did not upgrade it to the PS5. So technically, it's the PS4 disc on the PS5. So it's like kind of like that. I'm not sure if that's PS4 gameplay, but I think you understand though. So let's talk about the game now. Honestly though, I was hyped as hell for this game because it was made by one of the original creators for Dead Space, and they made it from their own studio, and I'm like, oh, it also has Josh Duhamel from the Transformers movies, and Karen, I can't pronounce her name, from The Boys Show. Not to mention the great and underrated Sam Whittier from the Force Unleashed games, and Darth Maul in Star Wars animated form. So, with all the talent on the screen and behind the screen, you'd think this game would be masterful. But sadly, no. This game is good, don't get me wrong, but it has a lot of problems holding it back from being truly good. So, let's discuss the biggest problem with the game, and it's the weapon system. Now, technically, when it comes to the weapons in video games, you expect to get weapons slowly but surely. You start off with one weapon and you upgrade there from the beginning. That's not how this game works. Technically, you don't get a good weapon until halfway through the game, and that's a problem because most of the time you aren't even using a gun. You know what you're using? A night guard stick. And yeah, the melee combat, it's not perfect, but I got used to it after a while, so I was fine. However, I do gotta mention the dodging mechanic. Now, don't get me wrong, it is helpful. When an enemy is trying to attack you, you move to the left or right on the joystick, depending on the movement and where they're heading towards. Like, if they're hitting left, you gotta dodge right. If they're hitting right, you gotta dodge left. You get what I mean, right? But this system becomes a very big issue later. I'll discuss it later because I still want to talk about the weapon system. Because the weapons aren't bad, but for those who are looking to shoot in the game, you might have to wait a little longer before you're able to even really use a truly good weapon. Even then, the weapons are your standard weapons. You have an AK, you have a pistol with a bit more kick, you have a shotgun. By the way, shotgun very helpful, but not much ammo. I'll get to that in a bit. And you also have a revolver. Your standard guns. Nothing too cool. There is also the gravity thing where you get to grab zombies and just throw them. I know they're technically not zombies, but I'm just gonna call them zombies, okay? Because it just makes it easier for me. So you grab the zombies and you shoot them against the wall. Now, I didn't use it as much as I should, mainly because I always panic and I just expect to either attack or shoot. So it does come in handy though, especially during sequences where there's a lot of enemies coming in. I'll get to that later because that's a problem too. But still, it's just that I think the game should have maybe fixed it a bit. To fix it, I would have the game start off with one gun and one melee weapon instead of just a melee weapon for a little bit of the game, in the first half of the game. Because only using a melee weapon, I just think it'd be nice for a little bit more variety, if you get what I mean. Because after a while, you're just like, okay, here comes another enemy. Well, I'm gonna slash and slash and slash. If you have a gun, it'd be a little bit more variety. You're like, okay, what do I do here? Do I slash, or do I use my gun, or do I save ammo, A little bit more of the mental capacity thing, you're thinking, what should I do? Should I do this, or should I do this? Another problem with the game is difficulty. Now, I get it. These type of games, they're hard. But there's a difference between an actual difficulty and unfair difficulty. For example, I'm gonna give an example of a game that's hard but it's fair. Dark Souls. Dark Souls gives you the right amount of difficulty, and there's only one difficulty, so technically it's not unfair, it's just difficult. The enemies are just hard enough, but there's patterns and there's specific movements that you have to make in order to beat it. And when you beat it, you get a big reward. Easy, right? However, this game is not the same. It's just unfair. And that goes into the combat system too. So let's just explain it like this. If there's just one enemy fighting you, there's no problem with that, right? You can dodge, attack, blah blah blah, right? But if there's more than one enemy attacking you, by the time it takes you to turn around using the camera, the other enemy will continue to attack you and you will most likely die. So yeah, that's a problem. The camera maybe moves a little too slow, especially during combat sequences when the game requires you to beat up enemies. Not very handy, is it? Also, ammo, super scarce. Now, don't get me wrong, games like Resident Evil have ammo that is super scarce. That's fine, right? But if you don't have enough ammo during specific bosses, you might as well just give up, because that is like a legit requirement, especially during the final boss. But speaking of bosses, let's talk about the bosses in this game. There are 3 bosses in this game, and here's the thing about it. Now, if you've known me for a while, I like variety in my bosses. If it's like the same boss over and over and over again, unless you change it up a little bit, I'll be a little upset. So, this game has 3 bosses. 3 bosses. 2 are recycled. Great! And I don't like that. Because, here's the thing. The bosses are easy once you understand their movements. For example, when you dodge, you will never get hit. You are unkillable if you dodge the enemy's attack. This makes it easier, and I nailed it the second time the boss came up, because I realized if I dodge, I'll be fine. There's no pressure, there's no worrying, there's no nothing. Because once you realize you can dodge, you'll be fine. Trying to play fancy ironically makes the game harder, so that sucks. But when it comes to boss encounters, it just seems easier to just go the regular way of dodge, shoot, dodge, shoot. If you try anything fancy, like maybe using the grabbing thing, or setting up you call it specific shots, like cut off their bodies or anything, or try to attack from behind, it just doesn't work. And that's the biggest sin, is the difficulty spike. And it also becomes a big issue in the final boss, mainly because it's completely unfair. Now, I understand if final bosses are hard, that's fine. I'm not saying they shouldn't be hard. It's the final boss, they should be hard. But if your health doesn't get reset, that's a big problem. And that's why I kept dying. Sure, there was health all over the place during that fight, but one hit would get me killed instantly. And the enemy charges towards you, so it's a challenge to get full health. So, in tips for the final boss, I would suggest going full health, all bullets, because trust me, you will run out of bullets if you don't have full bullets. And a low amount of inventory space makes that final boss all the more frustrating. So yeah, that's a big issue. Also, I gotta mention how the game runs, because it doesn't run well on PS4. Even on PS5, it just runs a little there's frame rate issues, textures are still loading in. Before the update, it was bad. It was really bad. But then after the update, most of the texture issues and the frame rates slowed down a bit. So I'm like, okay, that's fine, as long as the game still worked. And thankfully, there was no bad combat sequences, or like sequences where the frame rate dropped, you know? So there was no severe lag either during those sequences, because if I did, there'd be a bigger problem than what I was mentioning. And I gotta mention the final problem. It's the ending. Now, in a video game, what's the last thing you want people to know? An ending, right? Like, an ending has to hit you hard, you know, establish a really conclusive ending because you've been playing for so long. And there's moments in video games where the ending basically ruins the rest of the game. Mass Effect 3 is one of the big examples of that. So, I was hoping for a conclusive ending, and no, there was no conclusive ending. I was like, did it run out of money? Or was this the way it was intended? Well, I did a bit of research, looked on Twitter, and I realized, son of a bitch. You want to know what it is? A season pass. And I just kind of sat there and I'm like, there better be an ending on this DLC or more missions. And yes, I'm paying for the season pass because if there's more missions, I'm down for that. I know it sounded like I hate this game, but there's still a lot of good stuff to talk about it. You know, like, there's a lot of good things to mention. For example, the death animations. Holy moly. They're some of my favorite I've seen in a video game. I love how gory and disgusting it is. The deaths are so fantastic. And then, not to mention the great voice acting from Josh Duhamel, because he really sells it. Like, I swear, it's like I just watched him actually get killed on set. And I'm like, oh my god, dude, that's crazy. The detail on it. And, you know, this is one of those few M games where I'm like, yeah, this is definitely M. But, you know, even though there's still a rating, which is for adults, I'm like, this might go for A. I can understand why it was banned in Japan, because I'm like, damn, that is excessive, even for a rated M game. Holy moly. Every time I died in this game, I was like, well, at least I get to see a cool animation. So, yeah. And it was the scariest part of the game. So, pro tip, don't die unless you want to get traumatized for life. So, another thing I liked from the game is the atmosphere. Thank goodness they nailed the atmosphere, because it makes it more terrifying. Because the prison needs to be sold with terrifying atmosphere. And if it wasn't terrifying at all, like the atmosphere was just like a generic prison, then we would have a problem. But thankfully, it has a scary environment. There's a lot of stuff happening in the background, creepy hallways, and it just sells it really well. Not to mention the music, which is great. It's creepy, though it was a bit loud, so I had to turn it down, but still, it's really creepy and I liked it. It adds to scenes. I also like the exploration of the prison, because you get to see what kind of sadistic human being created this sadistic prison. Get to see different types of security, what they're actually doing in the prison, uncovering it, heading to different environments, because I never knew what to expect and was looking forward to crazy enemies and crazy shit that I would deal with on my journey. Even though I did complain about the combat system, I gotta admit, I still had fun with it, especially with my little brother, who was making fun of me the whole time I was playing, as well as suggesting tips on what to do in the game. I definitely recommend playing this game with friends, as it proves it is more fun with, like, friends. I think any horror game is more fun with friends, but this one's pretty good too. I also like the graphics and the models. They look amazing. For some reason, this game looks way better than most games I've seen on the PS4. Like, what? How? Like, isn't this studio's their first game? And it looks better than most games I've seen. The models, the graphics, the environments, like, oh my gosh, they must have had some good money behind this, because it looks great. Now, if there's a sequel, I wanna play it. Mainly because the graphics, the atmosphere. I know they'll know the atmosphere if they ever make a sequel, so I'll be good with that. And the animations, it just feels real, you know? It feels like a movie during certain sequences. I also like that Dead Space veterans get rewarded for this type of game, because they expect certain sequences to have jump scares and are prepared for it. I've seen many clips of YouTubers where they see an enemy and it's pretending to be dead, and they're like, yeah, I noticed that one. Nice try. I'm not that dumb. And they kill it. And yeah, I did notice that once, but most of the time I was jump scared due to my inexperience in horror games. Did I mention this is my first horror game? Well, there you go. I get that this game has divided a lot of people. Jacksepticeye doesn't like it, and I've seen other people dismissive as like a Dead Space clone, and other people I've seen talk about the awful frame rate issues on PC. Yeah, all that's valid criticism, but you are allowed to like things that people may not like at all, and that's one thing I gotta mention. If you like this game, that's good. If you hate this game, that's also good. Both sides are understandable. And I just had too much fun with it to hate it completely. So, yeah, it's understandable. I get it. There are some glaring issues, but I managed to ignore them for the most part, except that final boss. Screw that boss. I'm giving Callisto Protocol a 7 out of 10. I know it's a big high, and if I was being technically more honest, I'd probably give it a 6 out of 10, but I just had a good experience with it, and had fun laughing with my brother on how bad I was and how scared I was. I mean, yeah, if you want to play it, you can play it. You can judge for yourself. You should probably just wait for the price to go down, as the game is like around 7 hours. Maybe 8 or 9 if you're bad, or like higher difficulty. But still, it is a short game, and I don't think it warrants full price. Maybe wait till 30 bucks? 30 bucks seems right. So wait for it on discount. You'll find it. And most likely get the season pass if you want to get a conclusive ending. And yeah, some games, you know, they don't give a conclusive ending. Or I wish sometimes a game just completely just comes full packaged. What happened in those days, you know? Where a game, when it was shipped, everything was on it. Anyways, hope y'all enjoy the rest of your day, and thank you all for watching. I'm going to bed.